Wow. I've seen this, I think is our 8th showing of this movie, and every time it gets you. I want to take the time now to introduce our moderator for the evening. John Hamilton is the CEO of Liberations Program, one of our Community Fund grantees. He has 30 years experience in helping thousands of people build the foundation for a lasting recovery. He has consulted for the National Institute for Drug Abuse and the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration, and currently chairs the advisory board for Connecticut Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. Thank you, John, for your time.
Thank you. It's a very sad and tragic movie. It's hard to actually have to talk about it after that. You hear this opiate epidemic and the drug addiction problem that we have in our country. We actually lose 174 people a day to a drug overdose. But if you factor in alcohol-related deaths per day, it jumps to 415. So this alcohol issue is completely overshadowed with the opiate epidemic and prescription drug use, and but it's more pervasive than people realize. And it is still the #1 drug of choice on college campuses. Something that wasn't covered in this movie, and I'm going to talk to the panelists about this, it's not just the use of alcohol that's so deadly and lethal in college campuses, but now the use of benzodiazepines with alcohol. There's like a synergy, like 1 + 1 = 3. It's starting in high schools with Xanny bars, and it goes to college where the pregame now is taking a Xanny bar and then drinking. And that, again, is a very, very scary combination. In fact, even with the opiate epidemic, with the heroin overdoses in Connecticut last year, 1/3 of all lethal overdoses had benzodiazepines in their system. So it's a real problem. We have some great panelists tonight, though, and we have some great questions. So I'm going to, toss it to the experts with the questions that are coming up today. And we have a couple of good questions already put aside by some of the students, right? And then we're going to open it up to the audience. So first I want to introduce Officer Bryan Almond, who is actually grew up in Stamford, has been a police officer in Darien for 12 years. After working as a patrol officer for 10 years, he moved to the school resource officer position, actually located in Darien High School during the 2016-17 year. In the past, he's acted as a school liaison officer at Hindley School and assistant coach for the DHS wrestling team. So he has a very unique perspective, and if he can come up on the panel. Next, we have Mackenzie Cochran, who is currently a senior at Providence College. I hear she's already got a job. She's like a rock star, studying marketing and finance, and is also a Division I swimmer. Mackenzie will graduate in May and will be working at LinkedIn in Chicago. Mackenzie graduated Darien High School in 2015, where she was captain of the Blue Wave swim team, president of the youth asset team, and was actively involved in various organizations. She's dedicated to be back and support the continued success of the youth asset team. So, Mackenzie, come on up. Last but not least, we have the therapist in the group, Phyllis Weiss, who is a licensed psychotherapist, certified career counselor, mental health consultant, and parenting coach, offering support for adolescents, young adults, and individuals. Phyllis has spent over a decade counseling college students in higher education, right here in Fairfield County at Fairfield University. Phyllis now has a private practice right here in Darien, where she's lived for 20 years with her family. Phyllis's children graduated Darien High School in 2011 and 2013, respectively. Received her master's from the University of Bridgeport and completed her clinical counseling program and awarded Award of Excellence. Come on up, Phyllis. Okay, we're going to start with Officer Wallman, since you're right closest to me, and you have the first question. In your role as the SRO, are there themes from Haze that connect to what you see happening on the ground in Darien?
Well, we're certainly, as a police department, still responding to underage drinking parties. That's a tale as old as time, I guess, in really any town. We're not, knock on wood, we haven't experienced anything like we've seen in the movie, but we have oftentimes been bringing underage drinkers to the hospital for alcohol poisoning. Some of these situations involve students experimenting with alcohol for the first time and not really knowing their limits. And other times it's students experimenting with alcohol, and if you weave in kind of social media, it's not a frat, but there's sort of this upsmanship, I guess is the word, where everyone's kind of trying to prove who's having the best time and who can drink the most, and they're posting it, and they're kind of like flaunting kind of who's kind of the best at it. Being the SRO kind of gives me a unique perspective in a sense. I'm still plugged in at the police department, so I know what's going on the weekends outside of school, and it can tie back into the school. Since I'm there, I can kind of see the social ramifications of what happens when a student is transported to the hospital, because again, everything's posted on social media. Everyone already knows that a student's been brought to the hospital. And you can see how that fallout is at the school, and the embarrassment that that student has to carry. And it kind of puts me in a neat spot to be able to have both sides of it. And then on the other hand, I'm at the conclusion of this end because I'm on the juvenile review board in town. And sometimes when there has to be ramifications to having a party, I'm kind of there to see that as well. So there are some tie-ins. The frat obviously isn't a part of Darien, but social media is making it similar.
Just a quick follow-up question. Can you let the audience know what the Juvenile Review Board is?
Sure. It's think of it like Darien court for anyone under 18. Anything below a serious charge, no felonies, but certainly if you're hosting an underage drinking party, there's a chance you'll fall into the capsule of the Juvenile Review Board, which is a panel of people who listen to your case and come up with a sort of custom punishment for the crime that was committed. So it keeps you out of the court system, and if you follow all the instructions or mandated things to complete, you'll come out at the end with no criminal record, but hopefully some good will come of it as well, because it's custom. We can kind of do whatever we want essentially. Court, you're either just going to do community service or a fine. So it's unique in a sense. Excellent.
Mackenzie, does this film portray your college experience, and can you tell us how your college experience differed from your experience at Darien High School?
Absolutely. I will say this is my 6th time seeing this, and every time I watch this documentary, I still get the chills, and I feel very lucky that I've not seen something like this in college to this extreme, but it is very unfortunate and horrific that this has happened, and I said this last year, but it's one death too many, and just you all being here today, and either as a parent or as a student and maybe going off to college very soon, let this be a reminder, and also share it with your friends too. You need to be responsible for what you do, but also like the people you surround yourselves with. And you know, like, this is not something that happens every Friday, Saturday night, but there is always potential that it could happen. And I think that potential alone is worth talking about, and just being aware of, like I said, your surroundings and who you surround yourselves with. In college, you're given a lot more independence and freedom, so it's kind of up to you how you spend that time and how you want to go out with friends. You can have a drink, but you also don't have to drink. And in high school, you may have your parents saying, be home by this time, or just simply don't even go out at all. But in college, it's really up to you what you want to do in your time. So just make sure you always think about what you want to do with your time.
Thank you. Phyllis, as your work as a counselor in the past at Fairfield University, are these themes from Haze, do they resonate with the work that you did on college campus, and can you elaborate?
Thank you, John. Absolutely. And I was sort of listening to Mackenzie saying, it doesn't really happen all the time. It's not what you see that happens all the time. I was actually on the other side of it where, yes, it does happen on a regular basis. Almost every weekend at Fairfield, we would have alcohol transports. And it was sort of commonplace, generally freshman girls, first we call it, first 6 weeks, they go to dorms, they find the parties, they, drink Jamba Juice, whatever it is, a lot of mixing of everything, and everyone wants to bond, they want to connect, and, there's a lot of pressure to sort of feel like you fit in, and particularly young women in the very beginning, quickly get intoxicated, quickly there's alcohol poisoning. So it does happen more frequently. You just don't always see it. So this does resonate with me. Some schools have fraternities and sororities and some don't. So Fairfield didn't have them. So, but yet there wasn't hazing, but there were still parties. There were still, alcohol transports. It still goes on. I think the biggest takeaway for me was the whole concept of bystander intervention, that, you are with other people, and I love that little thing at the end where it said pubs, and that if you're noticing that you're with someone and they're not okay, do not hesitate to call. The other thing I will say is that colleges give you what they call immunity, and there's so much fear with freshmen or sophomores that, oh my God, I've been drinking, and if I call, I'm going to get in trouble with public safety. No, you get immunity. So if you're calling an aid to someone else, you don't get in trouble no matter what you've been doing. So, that's, I think, a great step that colleges have been doing lately to sort of, encourage intervention, encourage prevention. So I see that as a big step forward. So,
That's a great point. I think if there's a challenge in our high schools today, it's the messages and prevention programs of like zero tolerance. And to the point of the movie, that helps some part of the community, but it's not helping kids that are already drinking drink safer. And it's not enabling kids to learn how to drink safer. It's keeping them alive, enabling them to keep them alive. So it's a shift, but still politically, I think it's a hard sell in a lot of communities. Now, Mackenzie, another question for you here is people want to know, one of the students wanted to know, what do you wish you knew your freshman year that you weren't prepared for in Darien that would have been able to help you in your freshman experience?
Absolutely. I think no matter what school you end up or whatever your plans are after college, after high school and entering college, it is a big transition. It is hard, and it's a transition that is not often talked about. I think college is looked at being, so fun. It's a new phase, and often you are very excited, but it can also be very scary, especially managing not just the academic, but the social transition as well. And something that I realized pretty quickly in college is that going out or just drinking is kind of like driving for the first time. You're still kind of trying to figure out the roads. You're trying to pay attention to the signs and the lights. And while you may be confident in your driving skills or beginning to be more confident in your driving skills, what you don't know is how the other drivers on the road are going to act. You don't know. So whether on the drinking situation, you don't know how other people around you are going to respond to alcohol, how they're going to react if they're drinking too much, or even if they know if they're drinking too much. So when you're driving, you're always very aware, and you want to have kind of your guard up. I'd say the same thing goes for when you're in a social situation or drinking. So I would definitely just say kind of be aware of that, and just at the end of the day, you want to make sure you use your common sense. My college coach now, he always tells us, don't be stupid, and we kind of laugh and we're like, all right, we get it, but he's right. You don't be stupid. Use your head, and when you put it all together, you can have a fun night, but also a very safe night, which is the most important thing.
Here's a question for the group, which is, how can I make sure I'm going down the right path? And just to start that off, for instance, what's the greatest predictor of binge drinking in college? It's participation in team sports in high school. That's the greatest predictor. So all the kids out there that think, I'll be fine, I'm playing sports, think about it. If you're not going to be playing Division I sports in college, you're going to have a lot of time on your hands, a loss of identity, a yearning for connection and new social competence, a sense of social insecurity, which all leads to drinking games, wanting to connect to sorority or fraternity. So it's just something to be aware of. So for the panel, what would be some of the warning signs that you're not going down the right path, or some of the ways to instruct or direct would be a right path or a safe path, I guess, when it comes to particularly this movie?
John, can I clarify in terms of drinking? When you say right path, what do you mean?
I think it's, with regards to the movie, it's from the students. Yes, Emily, I got a definitive yes from Emily. Yes, regarding drinking.
So when you leave and you walk out of here, I actually left a questionnaire called the Craft Questionnaire. And it's a great instrument that we give on college campuses. It's for college students and adolescents, but it's just a little instrument to say, in the past 12 months, have you done A, B, C, or D? And if you score a 2 on it, you're kind of headed towards, you're kind of in the realm of alcohol use disorder. So think about what happens very quickly, I've noticed with kids that I work with, is that they'll get to college, maybe they didn't drink a whole lot, but all of a sudden, it's like they drink and they go, wow, this feels great. And all of a sudden, maybe they had like a couple shots and whatever they had, and it's like, well, gee, that was great. I'm gonna do that again. And then it takes them, maybe they got, pretty buzzed, they had a good time, and maybe it took them a couple beers to do that. Well, maybe they notice very quickly that their tolerance goes up very fast. So what used to be just a couple of beers was now maybe 10. So one warning sign is the fact that your tolerance goes up very quickly. So it takes you don't get as drunk in the beginning, but you need more to get drunk. Okay, so that's number one. Your mood changes. That's another thing to notice that you've got an issue, is that all of a sudden you're really irritable. You become either really nasty when you're drinking. You have emotional breakdowns. That's a sign that things are not okay. You start planning your life around when you're partying. Maybe you're skipping classes. Maybe you're noticing that you're not functioning the way you used to function. So these are just some. I'm sure others want to join in, but those are sort of a few of them. But mood, tolerance increases, and your loss of functioning. You're noticing you're not performing the way you used to.
Well, I guess mine's kind of easy. If you've had some kind of police contact outside of,
There you go, yeah.
outside of saying hi to me at the high school, it maybe some decisions need to be made about maybe who you're hanging out with and what you're doing. Because you don't usually just hang out.
That's the T in craft, by the way. If you've gotten in trouble as a direct result of your drinking or drug use, probably a problem.
Yeah.
The other way to look at it, too, from a simple standpoint of what puts you at great risk, is if you're drinking or actually doing drugs to feel good, you probably will be okay if it's about connecting with others, although, as you saw in this film tonight, even the first episode could be tragic. Where I see the big red flag is if you're drinking or doing substances to feel better, self-medicating, not being comfortable in your own skin, being able to deal with it to mood regulate your anxiety or your depression or something else going on, then you're really in trouble. Yes.
If I may jump in, oftentimes a good sort of segue is, oftentimes we are coming to college with some anxiety and with some mood disorder, some depression, or some things that we're struggling with. And oftentimes we feel, to John's point, that we can't be social unless we're sort of socially lubricated. That maybe it's the first time that we've had to make friends, that we've had to figure out how to connect with people, and that we are so anxious, that our anxiety is so huge, that the only way we can do it is if we sort of self-medicating. So if you're beginning to notice that in order for you to sort of feel normal or talk to people or go out, that you have to sort of self-medicate to calm yourself down, that's when it's so important to go to a counselor and check that out, because it's probably your anxiety that starts the problem, but then you get into sort of maybe addictive behaviors, or you get in way deep before you can really, before it's too late, really.
I think just adding one more thing too, I think the first year, and especially the first semester of college, you're not fully sure who your friends are yet. You're still trying to figure out who kind of has your side, who can you trust, and it's an overwhelming first semester, but especially an overwhelming year. I remember just being kind of trying to figure out who are my friends, like who am I going to go out with this night, like who am I actually friends with them, are we just friends, or are we in a group chat? Like there's so many different feelings that go through your head. And again, that kind of leads to the point is everyone handles alcohol differently. And some people may say like, oh, well, I can only talk to that boy if I have a drink, and I can only do this if I have a drink. But you shouldn't, that should be a warning sign, I would assume. Like if there's a constant, like I can only do this if I have a drink mindset. Then also as you go through college, your friends may change. You may have a much better idea of who your actual friends are too. And if there's someone in particular who you've become very good friends with, and they're continually saying, well, I can only do this if I have a drink, or, oh, I just need to get through the week to have a drink, then I would assume that's definitely a big red flag and something you may want to ask them, like, is everything okay? And maybe use your school resources to make sure that they're okay and make sure everything's good.
Phyllis touched on this, but Officer Wallman, this is a very important question for the students asked. If I call the police or the ambulance, will I get in trouble?
I get asked that question a lot, and it's unfortunate because that just thinking that creates a delay in getting help on scene. There certainly will have to be some sort of investigation as to who supplied the alcohol. If who hosted the parties, obviously a big deal. We've seen a lot of that in town. But in the moment of somebody needing medical attention, that's a moral decision that has to be made. And you kind of have to weigh potentially getting in trouble with us against potentially losing a friend. And you have to keep in mind, if this person that you don't help passes away, now you're facing more serious charges than just hosting a party or having or getting in trouble for supplying beer or alcohol. Now you're facing manslaughter-ish charges because you neglected to help somebody in need, and as well as opening yourself up to extreme civil liability if a parent is home and somebody obviously dies at your house. That's a big deal. So those are important things to keep in mind.
Mackenzie, a question from the students. Have you ever been hazed in college or witnessed hazing going on?
I personally have not been hazed, and I feel very lucky that it has not happened to me. However, I do know that it does still happen on college campuses, and I do know people who have been hazed. And it's something that, unfortunately, like I said, it does happen, and this was a very extreme case of hazing happening. But you have to use your resources, be smart, and I think one of the people said in the movie, like, you have to, like, is it worth having a friend who's going to haze you in the fraternity life? At PC, we do not have any Greek life, so I've not been part of any fraternity sorority life at all, but I wouldn't feel comfortable wanting to join a group of friends that would do something that bad to me. And I think it just kind of boils down to surround yourself with the people who you want to be and who kind of represent who you are as well. You are your own brand, and how you represent yourself is very important, whether that's in person or on social media. Social media can be a whole nother topic, but what you're posting reflects who you are, so just always kind of think of yourself as your own company or your own brand, and that should reflect who you are and kind of who you surround yourselves with as well.
Thank you, Mackenzie. The other piece, too, that was covered in the movie, obviously, was the tragedy of the deaths. But more common than the deaths are actually sexual assaults. People don't realize, people have talked to me over the years about, what about this Rofinil and GHB and all these date rape drugs out there? They're not the date rape drugs. The date rape drug is alcohol. And there's over 70,000 reported sexual assaults on college campuses a year. And if you talk to a sexual assault expert, they'll tell you that's one of actually every 4 that actually happens. Only 1 out of every 4 women generally come forward, could be men as well, to report the sexual assault. So that's still so pervasive going on. Question of a parent wanted to know about talking to their kids who asked them if they drank or did drugs in college. How do you answer them? I'll start with that one. I have a bias. It's like how honest a relationship you want to have with your kids has everything to do with how honest you are to them. And it doesn't mean you tell them war stories and romanticize your experiences, but if they ask the question, just tell them the truth. And that's how you build trust in a relationship. But the panelists might have different views. What are your thoughts?
I am a parent, so I can answer that. Yes, honesty is the best policy. And I think, kids look to us as role models, so there is the fear that, well, I can't really say what I did. But if you say, look, this is what I did and this is what happened, this is what I learned from it. The other thing to keep in mind, particularly with drug and marijuana use, what we used back then really is completely different today. The marijuana today is three times as strong, John. I think that's what I heard. One joint in the 80s is like 1 or 2 hits today or
And
something.
nobody's even doing joints. It's all
I know.
THC.
It's all T's, I know. But
like 20 times more
it
potent.
is. It's 20 times more potent. So you can't even, what happened, back then is completely different than what our kids are faced with today. So, I think it's just, again, here's what I did, here's what I didn't do, this is why. And as your mother, as your parent, this is, I know what's out there. And, the thing I'm just sort of going to say about to parents is that, we spend so much time with our children, loving them, caring for them, giving them all kinds of enrichment opportunities. We send them to camps, we pay for lessons, we have tutors, we spend an inordinate amount of money getting them ready for college. Yet sometimes it feels like we do everything but this last piece, and sort of this last piece is the, sort of as the parents said, is educating our children about, what alcohol and drugs affect is our brain, and we have spent so many years enriching that brain of our children. And yet this is a huge neurotoxin. And, sometimes the connection is, here on one hand, I'm doing all this to make you a successful person, yet there isn't the conversation, or there aren't the boundaries, or the kids don't even know how you feel about it. And honestly, if your kids know that it's a non-starter for you, if we can delay onset of use, we know we can save and protect our kids from addiction going down the road. So I'm just going to put a plug in for that as well.
For the panelists, how do you help a friend who's struggling or you're worried about maybe struggling with drinking or even drugs? But for this film, if you have a friend that you think is drinking too much or classmate, how do you approach that kid? Any suggestions from anybody on the panel?
Just being plugged in at the high school, my office is in guidance, so I work closely with them. They're really good. It's pretty impressive how good they are at the high school. So I know kids at the school are have to meet with their counselors every so often. I know that they're very well liked. I think that's a really good first step. If they're worried, they can just mention it to a counselor. That counselor isn't going to turn around and then pull that student in and tell them who dimed them out about their drinking problems. They're just going to get them help. So I think that's already happened often, where other kids are concerned about some of their fellow students and they brought it to their counselor. So I think that's a good first start, or a place to start for me at the school.
I think in college as well, every campus has really good and strong resources, whether that be the student health center or personal counseling center. Even if you have a very close mentor, maybe an upperclassman or even like professor, I feel like there's always someone that you can talk to and just get advice and say, listen, I'm a little concerned about my friend. What do you think is going on? What can I do? Even if you don't feel, especially if you don't feel comfortable going right to your friend right away. And whether that be the best approach or going out to someone and having that person then talk to them, there's always someone that you can talk to. And Darien also has great resources as well for those in high school.
I'll just jump on what Mackenzie said. Great point, is that if you have a roommate you're worried about, a friend you're worried about, you can go right to the counseling center. You can make a phone call anonymously if you want to, or you can go in and say, look, I'm really concerned. What do I do? Oftentimes that sort of sends a chain of action from the counseling centers or the RAs. Well, people will just come check and make sure everything's okay, or they'll bring you in for an assessment, or bring your friend in for an assessment. But it's all confidential, no judgment. Everybody wants everyone to be safe and to be using carefully. And wouldn't you want that if that were you? If something was wrong, or people saw that you were in trouble, wouldn't you want someone to reach out to you and just sort of, ask the question?
Okay, we now turn it over to the audience for any questions. We've gone through all of our questions as parents and kids, so there may be a burning question. Anybody feel like they have the courage to take a positive risk and ask a question, right? By the way, that's a good way to build resiliency, right? Put yourself out there, take positive risks. It's a safe group. It's like group here. Nobody's going to make fun of you. Emily, you must have a question, right? Well, I'll start off. I think you want to lead with the sense of your real empowerment is your powerlessness. You start not with like a mandate, but with an understanding of telling your kid, I just went to this event tonight, scared the hell out of me. And it just frightens me to think that you could be in harm's way in college. I feel so powerless over that. I don't know what to do. I know I can't stop you, but that's your powerlessness, which is really your empowerment to state the facts and the truth. Your kids know that anyway, right? So you don't want them to go underground. You want to be their lifeline. So you want to throw that out, and oftentimes your kids will say, Mom, don't worry about it. I got my friends have my back. I'll be okay. Thank you. And they'll have and you want to send them a message in college that you have faith in them too, that you believe in them. We did this panel at Greenwich one time for the Fathers Forum, where all the kids talked about what messages their parents gave them that were the powerful messages. And that message of, I have faith in you. I know you're going to make the best decisions available to you at the time, and I love you. And no matter what you do, I'll always love you. That's going to stick in Mackenzie's head over anything. It's going to haunt her when she goes to that first sorority party. Like, great, now I can't have a good time because my parents believe in me. There's a difference between trust and faith, right? Trust is like, unless they're wearing a cape, they're going to let you down. It's not about you. Just have faith in them. And you have to tailor your intervention based on your relationship with your kid and how that kid knows you, and then your child's relationship with drinking. Because by the way, like your kid's freshman, sophomore year, even 8th grade, you have to check in with them all their choices. They may all of a sudden have their best friend from preschool no longer calling them because they choose not to drink. So that may mean they have loss in their life, and sit with that loss and honor that loss, and just don't assume just because you're happy they're not drinking that decision's not without consequences either. And then build on that. Have a safety plan where they can text you 3 o'clock in the morning and the grandma's got a heart attack, we took her to the hospital, so they can get out gracefully. Then you pick them up at 3 in the morning and all you say is thank you for believing in me and thank you for calling me. That's it. Don't ask who they were with, what they were doing, and then they're likely to call you again and you'll keep them alive. Anything from the panel?
Right on the money. I work with parents a lot, and I think, sometimes parents who are so anti everything, they do drive their kids underground. It's a really good point. And I think the open dialogue about, look, here's what's going to happen. This you might be facing this, and I know you're going to have to do this. But again, I trust you. But do you have a safety plan? Make sure you're with a roommate. If you're going to go out, never be alone. Always walk home with someone. Help them have this discussion with you so that you are their first line of defense. You are the person they're calling, and that you're you're with them in it as they're going forward. So that you're not hovering, you're not judging, but yet you are. You kind of have this tightrope of, I need to let you go because you need to go do this, but you're tethered, but I'm still here for you. And I think having a really good relationship with your child, knowing that you love them unconditional, there's not a lot of judgment, but you're aware of what's facing them and how hard their decisions are, because their decisions are very hard. And yes, they sometimes are making decisions that they are going to be lonely, that they are losing friends, and that creates a lot of anxiety. I often say sometimes they're calling you on a Saturday night because they're not going out, or you're home with them because maybe in high school, they've made some decisions and they're not doing certain things. Be available. Again, no judging, don't ask questions, and have a code word, if they're somewhere, and they say something, what the code words is, and I think that's a great strategy. So there's just so much we can do to just, so you too, you in the audience, you guys know that your parents are really on your side. They really are. They just want you to be safe. That's all it is just to be safe.
I think communication is great with your parents, but at college it's also very important to have a good communication and kind of like a plan with your friends as well. My friends and I would always joke, like if we went to a party or a house or something where we just didn't want to be anymore, if we were either just like uncomfortable or bored or something, we'd always kind of have like a joke or even as simple as, oh, like, do you want to go to this cafe in the morning? And it'd be like a random cafe. Half the time the cafe didn't even exist, but it was kind of a code word for us to realize, oh, okay, someone wants to leave, let's go. And be like, yeah, let's actually do that. And be like, oh, by the way, I want to grab my jacket. And we just kind of spin off of each other. And when we were all aware of the code word for that night, it just kind of allowed us all to have a safe night. And the code word even goes back to when I was in high school. My parents always said, if you need anything, just let us know. And sometimes it was easier to tell my friends, oh, I have to go let my dog out, or I have to go do something, instead of just saying, oh, actually, I don't want to be here anymore, I want to go home. So I think always having a code word and a good line of communication with your parents and the people you surround yourself with is extremely important.
I have a question, Mackenzie. You have people out here in the audience that do in college selection and all now. Would the college they pick really make a difference in their college experience regarding access to drinking and a drinking culture? Is there much differences in college campuses that you're aware of?
I think drinking is definitely a huge thing at most college campuses, but there's definitely campuses that don't drink as much as others. And speaking with some of my friends from Darien and the surrounding towns, most people do drink and have a fun time, but there's also a lot to do on campuses that don't revolve around drinking. You can go to a game, which doesn't mean you have to pregame for it. You can go to other events that go on campuses. I believe most colleges now have events Fridays and Saturday nights that are not, you don't need to be drinking for. There's plenty to do without drinking. So yeah, there's definitely a lot out there that you do not need to be drinking for.
High school, for example.
This was. Yeah, it was. It was shown last year, certainly.
Oh,
I don't know prior to that, my time. I've only been there two and a half years. But
To the whole school or the senior class?
I think it was, good question. Yeah, I think it might have been juniors and seniors or just seniors right before graduation, but they did have to watch it, yeah.
They're on the ball. That's good to hear. Yeah, because that is the audience. You're absolutely right. That's the audience.
I think that's new too. I did not see that, which was only a few years ago, but I did not see this in class, but I have seen it part of being of the app. But it's scary. Every time I watch it, I still get scary, and I'm still in college, and I hope to never see this, but definitely it's crazy.
Wrapping up here, what would be any closing messages that you would hope that people would walk away tonight with going down the aisle?
I just think for the students that are in the room, just, lean on each other and keep each other safe. And if I can harp on, again, not worrying about so much about the police, getting you in trouble or it's 'cause it's kind of some of the fallout of an underage drinking party. But certainly, if somebody needs help, just call for help.
I think at the end of the day, just do the right thing, and you all know what doing the right thing is. When we're young, if you need help, you're told, call 911. It's the same thing in college. Just do the right thing. Like I said, my coach always tells us, don't be stupid, use your common sense, and if you feel uncomfortable, just leave and do the right thing.
I'm just going to sort of add, just from a mental health perspective, that some students when they're entering school have, they're on medications, and we didn't really talk about this very much, but if you are on medications or your friends are on any anti-anxiety or antidepressants, know that they double the effects of alcohol. So that if you're drinking and you're using an SSRI or an antidepressant or anti-anxiety, you actually get drunker faster, and it's really, really dangerous. So be very, very careful. Obviously, the recommendation is to not drink if you're on these medications, but know that it can be really doubly dangerous. And as John mentioned earlier about, Xanax or Klonopin or Ativan mixing with alcohol can be really dangerous. So I also encourage any of you, we talked earlier about getting rid of the stigma, that it's really, we all struggle with stuff. We're not alone in this. So if you're going to college and you're feeling homesick or you're not feeling great, go talk to somebody. There's so many people that are on campuses that want to help and want to give you some strategies. So, you're not alone. That's really what I want to say.
And other medications worth noting, was just brought out, Adderall. On college campuses, people are using it to study, but when people go out to drink, because it's a stimulant, you're actually going to be able to drink more, and you're actually at greater risk for alcohol poisoning because you're drinking more. And then marijuana, which some people think is pretty benign, when you're smoking marijuana and then you go out binge drinking, it acts as a compazine in your stomach, it calms your stomach, so you're less likely to get sick and throw up, which again puts you at a greater likelihood for alcohol poisoning.
And I'm just going to add, Red Bull. So the mix to all of that is, adding that plus Red Bull so you don't get tired from the alcohol and you can go out and party longer, and that's, again, a combination. So, your parents, everybody's done a great job getting you to this point, and everyone just really wants you to really get the best out of college and be safe. So, that's really my message.
Thank you. On behalf of the Youth Asset Team and all of our sponsors, thank you for coming tonight. We hope this was a meaningful and informative event as you consider the dangers of binge drinking and the transition to college. Thank you, Officer Wallman, Phyllis, and Mackenzie for sharing your expertise with us.
And thank you, John, for moderating. This was such a knowledgeable panel, and we're so grateful for your time tonight. My name is Emily Larkin. I have the privilege of serving as the Youth Asset Team Advisor, and it's so great to see so many faces that I love so much here tonight. And in closing, we hope you leave tonight and continue this conversation with your friends and with your children. And I also wanted to share that the Our Darien campaign, it's a state-funded public health initiative that we release out of the Community Fund and the Thriving Youth Task Force, will be rolling out a new campaign this spring targeting these same messages, the dangers of binge drinking and the power of relationships and role modeling and an ongoing conversation. So please keep your eye out for that this spring. Thank you, everyone, for coming.